everybody. Welcome back to Stories with Bri. I'm super excited about my special guest today. Her name is Kia, and she is known on Instagram as reader.bae. Yes, honey. So excited. She's a social worker. She's a bookstagrammer, a cat mom, according to your Instagram bio, and all of the things. Anything else you want to share with people before we get to the iceberg?
Yeah, I'm a social worker. I'm very passionate about my job and my career and helping people be their best selves. So that's definitely a big part of who I am as well.
Yes, and as we were talking before, I think in DMs about you potentially thinking about becoming a librarian, those are all qualities that we look. I'm all about recruiting more of us into this field because we need it. And so, if at any point, like I told you before, you need any questions, you got any questions, you want to talk about it, I'm here because I am an advocate for more Black faces being in the field so that people can see folk that look like them. The
For sure.
people that use the library every day need to see people that look like them serving them so that they'll
Right.
know that this is a place where you can find safety and information.
Exactly.
So
For
I'm
sure.
super excited. And you're already helping as a social worker. You're already
I'm trying. I'm trying.
right. And I mean, you're doing a good job. At least I assume that you are. I believe that you are. You're doing an amazing job at what you do.
Thank
So
you.
I'd like to get started with some icebreakers. If you can remember, what's your favorite childhood book?
So when I first started reading, I was probably in middle school. And the books that stand out the most to me are the Blueford High series. I don't know if you've heard of those, but it's a series about basically kids at this high school, and every book was different. So there was books about like girls in a like I remember there was one book about this girl that was in a relationship that turned abusive. There was one about this girl, I think she was like in an abusive household. There was one about a young man that ended up in a gang. Like it was a lot of different scenarios, but I was like consumed with it because I feel like it was the first time that I ever read a book where I saw myself in the book. You know what I mean? Like most of the main characters were people of color. So it was just like, and for me reading is like the greatest escape. So at that time, like that is what really got me into reading, the fact that I could like open these books and not only see myself in the books but also like escape my world and like feel like I'm in the book, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I would definitely say the Blueford High series was like a game changer for me in regards to reading.
Okay. Actually, that does, now that you've repeated what it was called, that sounds familiar, but I've never read any of them. But yeah, it sounds like something I need to go back and check out so I can get some
Yeah.
recommendations for
Yeah,
others because
sure.
I agree, just based off some of the scenarios you just said, they definitely would resonate with even my own personal life. And I felt like that would have been important for me during that time growing up to see that
To
in
see
living
that, right,
to see
right,
people who look like me, especially going through the things
right,
I was going
right.
through at the time. So yeah, I agree that that sounds like it was definitely an escape and definitely something that helped you to really kind of cope, I guess, in during those times for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was those books were really good and I always recommend them, especially to kids. Um, because I think that is I think representation is important. Because you wanna for me the most important one of the most important things about reading is the material being relatable.
Yeah.
And the same with music. You know, music touches you when you feel like you can relate to it. Like when you see yourself in the lyrics and like what you're going through is reflected in the music. It's the same with reading. Like when I read a book, it touches me the most when I can see myself in the pages.
Yes.
So I always recommend those books to my clients who are younger, because I think that's important that they can see themselves in what they're reading.
I agree. I definitely agree, especially in regards to music, because music has been many different types of music and many types of artists have been in so many forms. an anthem for my life, and
Right.
they have helped
Right.
me through a lot of different things. And as I prepare to write like my second book, I'm noticing that a lot of my the titles of each one of those essays that I plan to write are kind of centered around music. So
Right.
I'll get to use that a lot, incorporate my love for music and how it healed or how it helped into that.
How it helped. Right.
I
Yeah.
agree with you on all fronts in that regard. So, do you have a library card? If so, how many?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a library card. I got a library card initially because I was studying for my exam for my it's called licensed master social worker exam,
Okay.
so my LMSW exam, and I needed like a quiet place to study and focus, so I got a library card so that I could not only utilize the library space, but their obviously their materials, their books, their computers, printers, and things like that. So it just happened that once I started falling in love with reading again, and I realized, wait a minute, like I don't know why I thought that like the library just had like super old books, like thesauruses and dictionaries and like old history books. I never realized that the library has like new and current material, classics, like that just never occurred to me until I really started browsing the shelves. And I'm like, wait a minute, I can borrow these books instead of going to Barnes and Noble every weekend.
Yes.
So it wasn't until about 2 years ago that I really started utilizing my library card to borrow books.
Yeah.
And that was also a game changer for me because I'm like, wow, I'm saving a lot of money. Like, this is great.
Yes, the library is an amazing resource, and a lot of times people do have these misconceptions of what the library
Yeah.
is and what it looks like. And like you
Yeah.
said, that's one of the things is like they think when you go into the library, oh, all you're gonna get is old stuff. All you're gonna get
Right.
is things that's
Right.
outdated. They're not gonna have anything that's up to date. When in reality, libraries are typically some of the first places where those new releases go first because
Yeah,
they
exactly.
know that there's going to be a demand on it, and so they have to make sure that they hurry up and put their
Have
orders
it.
in.
Right.
And
Right.
sometimes they put their orders, they get an opportunity to put their stuff in ahead of time so that they can have a reservoir available for those people who can't afford to go to Barnes and
To
Noble
go
or
to
any
the
of the bookstores.
store. Right.
Yeah. So
Right. Right.
and you said something that was great is that the library saved you money because that
Oh
is
my
a,
gosh.
it's a
You
big
have
thing.
no idea. I saved hundreds of dollars
Mhm.
using library, period.
Yeah.
Hundreds.
I can believe it. A couple libraries, not all of them, but some libraries actually put the amount of money that you saved at the bottom of your checkout.
Oh, really?
Yes, they not all of them, but some
Yeah.
libraries do that where they say you save X amount of dollars for
Yeah.
checking out these titles at the library. And that's why I think it's so essential because if we want a place where people can read and get access to literature, the library is that place. And I
Right.
always say to people, you're paying your tax dollars, you need to use this space because
I
you're
believe.
literally helping to keep the doors open. And so
Yeah.
I'm glad that you are utilizing your library card and you're using it well and that it's helping you to kind of
Definitely using it.
right, keep it together and not spend so much money on books that you may or may not be reading. Hello, guilty.
Right. Guilty too.
I surrounded myself with books and ain't even reading them. I just like them because they're comfortable and I like to
Yeah.
be around
Like
them.
you like looking at them. Like
Mhm.
look at my big book stack that I haven't touched in like almost a year.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. You feel it, you know the vibe. Like,
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
yes. So for you, digital or pen and paper?
Um, hmm. For writing,
Yes, for writing. Which one do you prefer more?
I think I would prefer pen and paper.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because for some reason it feels more intimate to me. Like if I'm like I've tried to get into the habit of journaling.
Mm-hmm.
Um Not every day, because that's not realistic for me. I had to realize I have to make realistic goals for myself, but
Okay.
I try to do it when I feel that I need to do it.
Mhm.
And there's something about pressing a pen to the paper
Mhm.
that is different than typing your feelings.
I agree. I'm more digital, but I definitely agree with the whole journaling thing. I just got into journaling within the last maybe 4 years, and I do agree that when I sit down and actually write
Yeah.
out my thoughts, it's
Yeah.
very cathartic, and I appreciate having that ability to do that, and it just acts as a form of release. But I do lean more towards definitely digital, especially when it comes to planning. Honey,
Yeah.
listen, I done bought planners, I done spent money on planners, and I get about 4 months in, it's over.
It's over. Yeah.
Not happening. So I was like, let me go ahead and quit acting like I can do this, because
Right. Right.
I can't. And so for you, either right now or overall, who's your favorite author or writer?
It's so hard to pick one
Mhm.
because I have so many that I love. But when I was younger, like, and when I say younger, I mean like in high school, I loved Carl Weber. I don't know if you know him, but
I know who Carl.
oh my God, every book I read by him, I was blown away. Like, I just loved his writing style. Um, and I felt that every book that I read by him was so entertaining. Like, I loved him. I haven't read any of his books recently, but I loved him. He's somebody that really sticks out to me when I think about like my favorites.
Mhm.
I love Lisa Jewell. I love Lucy Foley. I love Akweke Emezi. I think that's how you pronounce their name.
I don't know. Don't quote me, so I don't.
I believe it's Akweke Emezi. I love their writing. They have like a very poetic way of writing that is just, it does it for me every time, every single time.
Yes, Lucy Foley has easily became a newbie for me.
Mhm.
She popped up in my world towards the end of last year. I think the
Okay.
first book that I read by her was The Guest List, and
Yes,
then
love
from
that
The
book.
Guest List, I moved to The Hunting Party. I believe
Okay.
the next book, and so after The Guest List, everything that I could find by Lucy Foley, I've been reading. I just
Yeah.
recently bought The Paris Apartment. I have
Yeah.
not cracked it open yet, but I'm listening. I could not wait for the library to get to get me off the waiting list. So I was like, I'm in Target. I'm gonna buy this book and I'm gonna read it. And I just assume that it's just gonna be just as good as all the rest. And she just hit recently #1, I believe, on the New York Times bestseller
Did
list.
she?
Yes, I believe she's #1 right now. I don't know if she's still #1, but she was when she posted on her thing. So I'm super excited for her. Congratulations to Lucy
Yeah.
Bobby.
Congratulations, Lucy. I stand for
Right.
Lucy. I love
She
her.
deserved it. She deserved it. She deserved it. And for me in high school, Eric Jerome Dickey had a hold on me,
Okay.
and a chokehold on my life. Still does. He's always going to be at the top of my list when it comes
Yeah.
especially to fiction writing. He
Yeah.
has a writing style, as you were saying, he has a writing style that in many ways, although they lumped him into urban fiction, his writing style was very highbrow to me because
Okay.
the amount of words and things that I call them $10 words, the amount of words that I learned just by reading his
Yes.
is
Yes.
ridiculous. The
Yes.
amount of other information that I also learned was wonderful as well. But definitely the wordplay. I always, when reading his books, I was like, okay, dictionary,
You're right. What does define this word? What does this mean?
like what is he talking about? And then he also introduced me to different languages that I had never really necessarily read inside of any other books that I've read before. And I was like, this is urban fiction. Please,
Right.
please, where are you getting this from? You're not getting this from nowhere else. Like you can only get this from him. And so yeah, I definitely agree in that regard. So you said that you fell in love with reading and when you were in like middle school, right? And
Yeah.
so let's switch over gears a little bit because at the beginning I said that you're a bookstagrammer, which is something that I think a lot of people don't really know actually exists. And to be honest, like
Yeah.
I wasn't fully aware of the world, that how large and how grand, and it was a whole tribe and a whole vibe over there until the beginning of this year. Like I was
Yeah.
aware that people, posted things about what they were reading, all that. But when I actually came over, I was like, wait, it's a whole thing over
Different world.
here. This
Yeah.
is a whole world inside of the social media platform. And I feel like it's a safe space, and it's a
Oh
place
my gosh,
people
yes.
are like just sharing, and so far from me, everybody has been so kind and so nice.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same way about that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like you said, my Bookstagram has become my safe space.
Mhm.
So the space where I feel like I can be my most transparent self, because on my regular Instagram, I feel like social media in general is like a show. You know,
Absolutely.
we want to see you at your greatest. We want to see your greatest out of all the 800 pictures that you took. We want to see the greatest picture posted with the greatest caption. We don't want to see a hair out of place. Your
Mhm.
lips can't be dry. Your knuckles can't be dry. You got to be on point. At least that's how I feel.
And I
For
break all those rules. So
yeah. So this is the first space where I have felt like none of that matters. You know what I mean? Like we're just here literally to vibe and to nerd out on books and to talk about our favorites and to talk about what we didn't like and to talk about just everything that we love.
Mhm.
And that's what it and I kind of describe it as like this is like my lightning in a bottle like platform, right?
Oh,
So
that,
this is a space where I can literally just be my authentic self and share and create and love and everything that I put out is okay. Like I don't have to second guess anything.
ooh,
And
yeah.
I'm also learning so much from different people about books and literature and authors and writers. And it's just like, it's been one of the biggest joys in my life recently.
I
Um,
I
yeah,
agree. I described Bookstagram to one of my friends as, this is probably, I think I said it to her maybe a week or so ago. I said, this is the happiest that I feel like I've ever in my entire life have ever
yeah,
been. And the fact that I can take this part of me, this piece of me that I feel like I have loved and enjoyed. I don't remember a time in my life that I've never not been surrounded around
right.
books or reading or any of that, and to take that part of me, that very like you said, intimate part of myself,
Yeah,
and that part of myself, and share it with the world, and for it to be received so
yeah,
well by
yeah.
others. It came to me in a time when I really really needed it. Like I
Yeah,
really needed a space where I could kind of like incorporate this part of myself, the nerdy part of myself, as
right.
we say, where we're talking about literature, where we're talking about writing. Because I feel like, although I have been a part of several book clubs for a little while now, I still didn't feel like I was getting as much as I needed. And I needed to,
Yeah,
I have to create a space
yeah,
for myself and for others for them to
yeah,
come in. I've
yeah.
always been that person. And so this year, when I restarted that page, because I had the page before, and I thank God that nobody took my name. But when I restarted that page, and
Yes.
I redid it, and I was just like, wait, like it's growing and it's
It's
growing,
growing.
and
Yes.
people are following me. I'm like, hold up, wait.
Yeah, and
Oh.
I did the same thing. I had started one before, like a few years ago, and I didn't really, I guess I was comparing myself to other bookstagrammers who have like 15,000 followers and are getting all these free books in the mail and all this stuff. And so I was too focused on that,
Mhm,
as opposed to just focusing on sharing what I love.
mhm.
So and not caring about, the feedback. So I deleted that one, but my love for reading and for books and for people who also love what I love is so big that like I couldn't contain it. Like I needed an outlet. I needed to share this. Like every time I read a book that was like 5 stars, I'm like, I can't keep this to myself. I need to share this.
Yes.
So I started another one and I'm like, you know what, this time around, and I sat on it for a few months. I started it back in August and
Okay.
I sat on it for a few months. I would upload like every couple of weeks, but I wasn't invested.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until probably January or February where I really started posting and engaging and just being in the community. That, like you said, my page started growing. I started getting comments and likes and people reaching out to me. And it was like once I just focused on my love for books, you know what
Yeah.
I mean, and sharing that love,
Yeah.
that's when my page started growing. You know what I mean? And it's just such a special space for me. It's such a special, like, I every day I wake up looking forward to engaging with my followers and sharing what I've been reading and what I've read and things like that.
Yes, and I agree with you. And it was definitely that for me. I think for me, I started the Bookstagram because that page actually didn't even start as a Bookstagram. It did start as a creative outlet for me where I could just post pictures and post things that I'm
Right,
maybe writing or working on in whatever capacity without judgment. That's kind of how the page started. But then
right.
it got to the point where I felt like I was getting a little stagnant in that. And I was like, I don't really want to do this anymore. I don't want it to be dark like this because it was black. That page was like black and white. I mean, night and day compared to what it is
What
now
it
to
is
what it
now,
was
yeah.
before when I started it last year. And then I took like maybe 2-3 months off and then I restarted the page. Like I said, I was grateful that nobody took my name. And I was just like, okay, so this is what I wanted to look like. I reached out to a friend. She made a logo for me. I said, I kind of
Right.
want to do more neutral tones and things like that because I
Yeah,
love those types of things. And
yeah,
then I don't want it to be dark. I want it to
right.
be kind of light and airy. I want
Yeah,
it to, be a space where I feel connected and I like it. And so that's exactly what that is for me. It's a place where I like it. And then I release myself from the limits of because I can feel myself kind of like, oh, you have to post, you have to post, you have to. I was like, I don't though. I don't
you
have to
know,
post every day as long as I post something that I enjoy when I feel like it
right,
and engage in.
right,
These people who are following me, they won't want to be here. And I feel like
right.
my creativity though has kind of like been sparked again.
Yes,
I consider myself a creative person. I've always been a creative person. It's just like when you get bogged down by other people's opinions of you and how they feel something should go and you
yes,
keep constantly putting in information, input
yes,
because you just want somebody else to feel just as passionate about something that you feel
that
passionate
you
about.
do. Yes,
And then you have to realize like it's not about them. It
it's not
really
about
is
them, right?
about you, and
You,
people are going to be uniquely connected to you.
you,
And
right.
when I realized that when you guys started showing up, I was like, yo, like, oh, like people actually like what I say, how I say it. I can be my full self.
Yes.
I can just be out here like
Yep,
and be extreme. And I'm like, other people understand why I get so emotionally connected and involved to these characters, and they
yep,
feel just as passionate about it as I do. And it's like they get lost in these books because I've always just kind of like gotten lost and consumed into a world. Like when I'm
yes,
reading, I'm
absolutely,
reading. I am focused. Like
absolutely.
you probably might have to say my name once or twice before I look up and be like, oh, I lose time reading.
Yeah,
So do you
yes.
feel the same way?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Like I said, reading is my greatest escape. I have never in my 27 years, look, I'm young, so there's possibility for more, but I'm saying in all the years that I've been alive, I have never been able to escape in anything else the way I have been able to escape in reading.
Yes.
And that's what got me really hooked on it. Because once I realized, oh, I don't have to be Kia in 2022. I can be Harriet in 1968. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like once I felt that, that's why historical fiction is one of my it's probably my favorite genre because I literally feel like I'm being taken out of the present and thrown back into whatever year it is
Mhm.
with whatever environment is going on, whether it's like a war, protest, prohibition, slavery, like I feel like I'm taken out of the present world and I'm put into whatever it is I'm reading. And that's I'm addicted to that feeling.
Okay, and but because you like a lot of historic fiction, do you feel like, how does that make you feel afterwards? Do you have to kind of like shake it off once you're done with the book? Like, how do you kind of push yourself back into the present? Because
Yeah.
historic fiction books can be heavy. Like they can be heavy.
Yeah.
So how do you manage to kind of like separate yourself once you either have finished or in the middle, and separate that from your present reality to realize like, oh, this is the story. This is
Right.
not, even though it's similar to some stuff we're still dealing with right now.
Yeah,
This is
it
not
is.
that. So how do you do that? How do you kind of like put yourself?
So what I always tell, I say this all the time to people. When I read, I don't want to read like a hunky dory rom-com, a fairy tale ending. I'm not into that. That's why I really don't read romance, because
Okay.
I just don't like, it's just not for me. Like I don't want to read that. I want to read something that's going to rip my heart out. Like I want to read something that by the end I'm going to feel devastated. That's the work that really moves me and really like excites me. Like I want to feel like my heart has been ripped out of my chest.
Oh no.
So, but like you said, like some of these books can get really heavy, and obviously like I'm not the type that can read back to back to back to back heavy books. So I always try to mix it up. I've realized through Bookstagram actually that I'm actually a mood reader. I don't stick to a TBR pile. I don't stick to, like, I do have like hopefuls, what I hope to read in the month, but I don't stick to like a solid list. I just go based off of how I feel. So usually if I read like a heavy book, I might throw a thriller in between, or like a memoir, or something a little lighter, to kind of like balance it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So speaking of memoirs, I'm glad that actually transitions us into, I just finished reading, and I know that you read it too, Somebody's Daughter by
Yes.
Ashley C. Ford.
Jeff's Kids. That's oof. Let's get into this. Let's get into this. Somebody's Daughter.
Listen, Miss Ashley, I said Miss Ashley owe me some money, some time, some something, because like this, how dare you put parts of my life on
My life.
how dare you?
Who gave you permission to talk about me in your book?
Who told you, man? Like who told you? And I was like, this is ridiculous. And I think I said it in the reel. So many of us should not have this story. This should not be so many Black women's story of hurt, pain, abandonment, trauma. This should not be our stories. And like, it was so, I had to take so many breaks when reading that book, because I was like,
triggered.
Ashley, I need to sit you down for a leave there, so, because ma'am, no. No.
This is what we're not gonna do, Ashley.
This is what we're not going to do. You're not going to talk about how having a disassociated out-of-body experience when it comes to you being sexually abused. And I'm like, I remembered that. So when she talked about it, and I was like, first off, ma'am, how did you manage to describe this? Because I know when I was writing my book and I was reliving that trauma and having to, it was hard. It was rough. And so when she was talking about that, I was like, ooh, I was like, Britt, and my real name's Brittany, but I go by Bri. I was like, in my artist name, and I was like, ooh, this is you have to kind of soothe yourself. You was like, it's over. It's not happening. You're this is your reality. That is over and done. How did you feel about the book? Like, what parts like really resonated with you? I know for me, that was one thing that was like a major point for me, but how about yourself?
I think the part that resonated with me the most was the way that she wrote about her relationship with her mother.
Oh yeah. Oh girl.
Okay. Let's get into that, because she did that so well. And I think the part that resonated, that really stuck with me, and I posted this on my Bookstagram. She said, she was talking about something, she was engaging with her mother, she was talking to her mother, and her mother had, I guess her teacher, remember her teacher had accused her
Yeah.
of called her mom and was like, Ashley did so and so at school, and then when she got home her mom was really upset with her,
Yeah.
but it turned out to be a whole misunderstanding and Ashley had not done anything wrong.
Yeah.
So she had said, she knew what I wanted and she wanted me to know it would not be mine. We were locked in a power struggle. Not that I would have known to call it that because she was so young, but she could identify that that's what it was.
Yeah.
Not that I would have known to call it that. And I was confused because I didn't want power from my mother. I wanted her to acknowledge the pain in my body and my heart. I wanted it to mean something to her because she loved me and I knew it. And I couldn't understand why she couldn't just say sorry. What was so wrong with me that I didn't deserve that? Oh,
Girl.
I get goosebumps reading that because that resonates with me so much. Why is it so difficult
Yeah.
for parents,
Yeah.
especially Black parents,
Yeah.
to apologize, to say, I was wrong.
Yeah.
I am so sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think it's, once again, it's also a trauma response for them because
Yes,
they don't want to. I think for all of us, and I'm not even just going to say it is I feel like it is a cultural thing, but for all of us in many ways, it's an idea that we don't want to acknowledge the fact that we could have possibly, even as a good person, caused somebody to feel pain.
yes,
And as a parent, I think for them, the realization that I have actually in some way caused harm to this child of mine, unintentionally and unintentionally, having to acknowledge that and
yes.
acknowledge that, it means that I actually have to also acknowledge that I have experienced the same thing. And I think for them, it's
Ooh,
like they don't want to have to tap back into their
ooh,
emotional
yes,
center and their
yes,
emotional self. And so
yes.
as a result, I rather
Yes.
not acknowledge that I caused you pain, because then that means that I have to also acknowledge that I have,
Acknowledge my pain.
and I don't want to acknowledge my
Ooh,
pain.
breathe. I was not ready for that.
Yeah.
Yes, Bree, yes, so
I have
true.
learned that. I had to learn that. I had to learn that in the process of forgiving my own parents, in the process of, and this comes also on the other side of therapy, because I mean, for years and years and years and years, even though it's constant. Like, people think that you forgive someone and then you just move on. No, it is constant and consistent. As I continue to grow,
Yes,
I find myself forgiving my parents and myself for things that I have either, one, allowed to happen to me,
yes,
or that happened to me as a result of that relationship not being what it should be. And I think that that is part of what, like, Ashley's story kind of like also triggered and opened up for me in my world. Because in the middle of actually reading her story, I started to write. I started writing a part of pieces of a chapter that I'm working on for my second book, and I'm going to call it Dear Mama, which, of course, is the title of one of Tupac's songs.
yes, yes.
And in the middle of listening to her story, I start to write out these feelings and how I was feeling about certain things, or how I've been feeling about things that I had never really acknowledged. And one of the things that I wrote down was that you're the only person that I refuse to talk about in therapy, because the immediate thought of discussing you and talking about you brings me to tears. And it's just a pain point within me that I have to kind of, like, I have no problem talking about, trauma with my father. I have no problem with talking about trauma with other family members and my grandmother. But there is something about, even though I've had conversations about my mom, there is something about sitting, dwelling, and standing in those feelings concerning my mother that's hard. Because so even when Ashley was talking about, having conversations with her mom on the phone, knowing what to say and what not to say, how to stay away from heavy stuff, and I was like, This is my relationship.
Yes.
Present.
How to avoid an argument.
Yes.
So you tip, like
You
know what
tiptoe.
to say and what not to say. Yes, and that's what I related to the most in this book, her relationship with her mom. And even when she had eventually disclosed the sexual assault to her mom, and her mom was like, oh, it was so and so, wasn't it? And that was the conclusion of that conversation. There was no, tell me about that. Why didn't you tell me? Did you tell anybody? How can I help you in this moment? How can I support you? I'm so sorry that you went through that. There was none of that. It was so and so, wasn't it? And then that was the end of the conversation. So I feel like that has a lot to do with the fact that if your child has been hurt, not by you, but by others, that means that in a lot of ways, as a parent, you failed to protect them, right? And a lot of parents cannot stand face to face with that. They don't want to accept that. No. That my child was hurt because I failed to protect them.
Yeah.
So instead of acknowledging that pain and that trauma, I'm going to act as if it doesn't exist me or it never happened.
Yes, because it's acknowledging your humanity. It's acknowledging that no matter how much you've tried, how perfected, how protected, whatever it is that you've had to do, that there was at some point that you dropped the ball.
Yes.
And having to acknowledge that you dropped the ball, it's a point of pride for all of us. Yes. And pride is what literally is our downfall oftentimes, because not acknowledging that at some point we made a mistake, it's like the hardest thing in the world. And I feel like it's especially hard for parents often to try to do that, because we have this idea of who we should be, or who we want to become, and who we don't want to be like. And then when we fall into those traps of being like the very people that we don't want to be like, it's hard to acknowledge that. Yes. And so, and I think especially for Ashley's parent, Ashley's mom, and for even my own mom, having to acknowledge that I hurt someone that I was supposed to be taking care of. It's rough. And that's why for Black communities, I wrote an essay about this, and I'm going to revamp the essay. Black parents don't apologize, they feed you. They ask you, this is how
hold up. Please say that again.
Black parents don't apologize, they feed you.
Wow.
And then on top of you feeding me, now you want to shame me from gaining all of this weight, all of these different things, because now I have connections. I have these oral asphyxiations. I have connections with food, because all I ever wanted was for you to, once again, going back to Ashley, acknowledge the pain that you caused.
Acknowledge my pain.
But instead of you acknowledging my pain, you fed me. And so now I correlate my feelings and my emotions with eating. And so if I'm happy, I eat. If I'm sad, I'm eating. Right. Yep. If I'm frustrated, I'm going to eat. Like, there are different things, because clearly you're not going to acknowledge this. Nobody's going to acknowledge that this is what's going on. So I'm just going to consume carbs and calories and stuff like that, and physically you can make yourself sick if you continue to do it. But I'm going to eat and eat and eat, because I want to continue to press down. I'm trying to suppress these emotions that I need to feel, that I need to get. And so then you get to the point where you're emotionally numb, at least for me. You get to the point that you're emotionally numb. And then when you go to therapy, now you're trying to figure out, now the therapist has to fight to try to get you to pull out those emotions and to feel them and to come present. And you're like, I don't want to feel that. And anytime that you are afraid to cry in therapy, you know it's a problem. Like, I had one of my therapists that I was working with. She was like, why are you not releasing yourself? I'm watching you physically stop yourself from releasing. Why? And she's like, this is a safe space for you. Or is it? Because you don't know who you can trust with your emotions. Because it's like, if these people the people that were supposed to love me, that a God assigned to me, did not give me space to do that. How am I supposed to trust that outsiders are supposed to give me that space as well? And so then with Ashley, so she had a twofold problem because it was like her mom wasn't present and then her dad physically couldn't be present. And so it was like trying to also deal with, and then also trying to deal with the trauma. So spoiler alerts for everybody. We didn't spoil it.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. I want to skip a few seconds here.
Skip all this. But like, the spoiler alert of, having to deal with the understanding and an acknowledgement that her father was in jail for raping women, and then she also was a victim. That was a lot.
Yes.
That was a lot. And
I think that played into why she didn't see him for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Like she went years and years without even really speaking to him, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I'm sure that was very conflicting for her. It had to be, to have this big love, because she had such a big love for her father, right? And to also know, her story was inspiring, but she went through so much trauma. Like even in the way that she found out what her father did, how her grandmother presented that to her, it was almost manipulative, because it was like she wanted Ashley's grandmother wanted her to confide in her and to open up, and when she didn't do that, it was like, well, do you even know why your dad is in jail? He did this. It was, what I mean? So that was, it had to have been hurtful and jarring. And to know what she went through with the guy that sexually assaulted her, to now knowing that her father, this man that she loves so deeply, also inflicted the same pain on somebody else or multiple people. Mm-hmm. I think that played a huge part in why she avoided him for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it also talks about how people violate your safe spaces.
Yes.
Grandmother did not just let her be.
Yes.
That was a safe space for her. When she told her that, I didn't want to talk about it, emotional maturity would have said, okay, I'll wait till she's ready.
Yes.
Instead of her waiting till she's ready, she's like, no, I'm going to hit you with this. Right. So then now, because now you caused me pain because you refused to share with me. Yes. Now I'm going to hurt you and I'm going to cut you deeper. Yes. Because now I'm going to tell you why your father is in jail, because I felt like you betrayed me in many ways. And so it was just like this act of betrayal, but it's, at the same time, it's like, who's the adult here? Right. You should know better. You should know better and you should be doing better. But instead, you took this time and this moment to not be. And as a result, now I have something else to pile on top of what I already have. And so as a social worker, how would you how do you handle that with even your clients? Like, how do you help them or teach them how to create effective, safe spaces for themselves? Like, especially if you had someone who went through a similar situation like Ashley. How would you take that situation to help them to, I guess, even recover and learn how to recreate boundaries and even re-enter into those relationships that are now not necessarily deemed as safe as they once were? What would you have done, or how would you incorporate that?
I think first and foremost, what I always do in situations that are like that or similar to that is I always want to validate my clients, right? Mm-hmm. Validate their experience, validate their feelings, their emotions. You're angry. You should be angry. Mm-hmm. You're sad. You have every right to be sad. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You're having these suicidal thoughts. You've been through a lot. Mm-hmm. So I can understand how it would be hard to avoid these thoughts. So validating people, there's so much power in it. There's so much power in validating somebody's feelings, because once they feel validated, they feel that their feelings and their voice matters. Mm-hmm. And they are more likely to use their voice if they feel like it matters.
I agree.
Yeah. And it's not always easy. It's not always easy. Like, I'm sure for Ashley, after years of, subtle abuse and upfront direct in your face abuse, it couldn't have been easy for her to even write this book, to find her voice, to write this book. Do you remember in the part where her mom like called her after reading one of her pieces and was like, why don't you ever write about the good times?
I was
You
just
know
about
why? You know why she doesn't write about the good times? I read a post that was like, when you have been abused or have gone through a traumatic experience with your parent, for example,
to.
you will always remember that. You will always remember that moment. You will always remember that day. But they won't, because for them, it was a regular Wednesday. For them, it was a regular, normal day. For you, it was traumatic. But for them, and that has happened to me so many times where I'm like, you really don't remember that you said this to me.
Oh my God.
So
Listen.
that, and her mom was like, why don't you ever write about the good times? Yes, there were good times. And I think that Ashley acknowledged those good times when they went to Blockbuster and bought pizza and moved into their new house. Those were good times. But these
So
traumatic times are a little bigger. They hold a little bit more weight.
they hold weight. These soul wounds that are there, these scars that are on my soul that literally keep coming up even as I keep trying to be present in current relationships. These are still a problem. And I don't, and I've gone through intensive, like I've been in therapy literally on and off, but I've been in therapy consistently for the last 4 years. Since I've been living on my own, and because I knew that it was time for me. Like I had tried other ways, wasn't helping. I knew that I needed to get consistent counseling if I was going to be a better person, a healed person, and if I just wasn't going to always be angry. I literally used to describe myself as the Incredible Hulk or as Bruce Banner. I would be like, I'm Bruce. That one line that he said, I can't remember which movie it is, but they asked him how did he contain the Hulk, and he said, I'm always angry. And when he said that, I was like, yeah. And it's just like you get to a point where you just constantly live in a state of anger that it just becomes who you are.
Your norm,
It's your norm, it's your baseline. And then when you start healing and you start processing, and you realize like, oh, I didn't have to be this person. I don't have to be this way. But then now when you're on the other side of that, now you have to fight to not be that person. And so yes, that line that what you brought up, I was going to say that, like when her mom asked her, why don't you ever talk about the good stuff? It's like, are we going to really sit here and act like you want me? Because in the Black community, and I can't speak for everybody else, but for us in the Black community, we like to sweep things under the rug. We like to act like and pretend like things don't happen. The biggest quote that has happened all across this country in Black families is, what happens in this house stays in this house. And it's just like, but it doesn't. It walks out this house with me every single day. It goes into every space, every relationship, every connection that I make. That pain carries me through all of life. And then it's till you get to the point that one day you want to decide that you no longer want to carry it and you wanted to speak it. And I read the audiobook, and at the end she had like an interview. And so she talks about how when writing the book that she had to be careful. And I remember doing the same thing for myself. Like she was like, she wanted to be able to write the book and not feel like she had to filter herself, and she had to give herself permission to write the story that was the most truest to her. And I feel like for me, and when I was writing my book, I was still very much so aware of and very much so protective of all of the other people's feelings. Although I wrote an amazing story and I did tell my part, I still felt like there were parts of the story that could have been added that included me that I didn't do because I just didn't want to, I guess I didn't want to see other people to see these people as bad people. And it was like, you're still protecting people, but that still hurts you. And so now, as I'm in the process of writing my second book, I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to be raw, unfiltered, because it's just the reality of it is, although you're protecting these other people's feelings and things of that nature, they didn't protect yours. They didn't protect you, and it's okay for you to own and acknowledge how somebody made you feel. Now it's up to them to now correct their behavior, you know. And I told a friend the other day, you're not responsible for making someone else feel comfortable or making them feel better about how they made you feel, how they treated you. Like, no, you're not responsible for giving them that. I was like, and there was a situation in my life, and I was just like, I am not going to I'm not going to come to you and to talk to you because you want permission, you want validation, you want me to make you feel better about how you have treated me. I'm not doing that for you.
Right.
You have to do that for yourself. Yeah. Because I'm only responsible for the healing process that after you have hurt me. I'm only responsible for my own healing.
Right.
Now you have to be responsible and accountable for however it is that you may have made somebody feel that resulted in you maybe being alone or being isolated and all those things. And I think that Ashley did a really good job of acknowledging everything that people made her feel. Yeah. But not victimizing or villainizing the people in her life. She's just simply told a story.
She did that so well. You said it correctly, especially with her father.
Yes.
Because I felt her love for her father.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that desire to have a relationship, to solidify a relationship with her father, even after she knew what he did.
Yes. Yes.
And because I thought, like, he robbed somebody. I did not see that coming. Like, I did not see him raping women as the reason why he was. I did not, just by the way that she.
I had no idea.
No idea. So even after, she did such a good job of portraying him, you know, in the sense that, like, he was her father and she loved him deep, but also that he did something wrong. So not making him a victim, but also holding him accountable for what he did. She did that so well that I felt conflicted about, like, what I thought about him, even though what I think about him don't really matter. What matters is how she feels about him. But as a reader, even after finding out what he did, I felt conflicted. Like,
yeah, I still was very much so empathetic for him. And I still was like, yes, he did this, but did he deserve to, like, he served over half of his life for this? Like, and even in that, though, I love the fact that her dad, he also took accountability for what he did. And he said to her when she was writing, he said, write the story. Do not, he even told her, like, don't write the story that you think you should write. Write the story as it's supposed to be written, which means that even when you talk about me, talk about what I've done and you know, and stuff like that. Don't try to protect
sugarcoat it.
Don't
just put it on paper.
And that's what I loved about it. I was like, she didn't sugarcoat, and I love the fact that her dad was like, don't. And I feel like it reminded me so much of, although my father has never been that person, like he's never done anything that bad, it still reminded me so much of my relationship with my dad, because my father is the same way. He's always, like, kept it real. He's very honest about, he's taken ownership of the trauma and the things that he has caused to his children and to me. Like a year or so ago, I had a real heart-to-heart conversation with my dad, and he just was open and honest, and he had a real deep connection. And the crazy thing about it is, when I came to my father was like, I was just waiting on you. He said, I knew the day would come. I was just waiting and preparing myself. And I was like, wow, this whole time. And so when I came, he invited me in with so much love and so much compassion and so much empathy. And he took ownership. And that's what I loved about it, is that he took ownership of the trauma and the pain that he caused in his absence or in his very presence, but still, you know what I'm saying? And I love that about Ashley's dad. And I feel like she's still kind of working on that with her mom. If that's the sense that I got. And same boat.
Yeah.
You know, because
Yeah.
I tried to have that same conversation with my mom and it's not happening. And I don't think it'll ever happen. And that's, you know, and I have to learn how to live with that and how to deal with it. And you still with the understanding that even despite all of that, I still want to have a relationship with you.
Yes. Because that's your mom. You know
Exactly.
what I mean? And I remember, so my mom and my mom is my best friend, my absolute best friend. She is everything to me.
Oh, that's
But she also has caused some trauma, you know what I mean? And not intentionally or knowingly maybe, but that's just the way it is. And I growing up, she's always said this. One day you're gonna wish I was here for you to talk to. One day I'm gonna be gone and you're gonna miss me. You're gonna wish I was here and you're gonna wish you were nicer to me. And I said, Mom, do you ever wish you were nicer to me?
woo, woo,
And she's
woo.
like, let's talk about that. Do you ever wish you were nicer to me? And she said, no, I gave you everything.
Oh,
And that goes to what you were saying. Parents, they don't apologize, they feed you.
yeah.
Because I never went without. Anything I wanted, I had. The newest phone, food, the newest laptop, the newest clothes, the newest sneakers, shoes, hair done, nails done, everything did.
Right.
Okay.
I would have traded all of that for emotional support.
For you to acknowledge my pain.
And acknowledge my pain. Yes, girl, listen. You just said a whole, you just said a whole.
Wait, this is a therapy session, okay?
Hey, ain't it? Look, turned into a therapy section, but I love it. And that's because I feel like that's how powerful the book was.
It
was so deep. It cut to the core. Like it was deep. And I was just like, she really made me acknowledge some stuff that I was like, oh, I'm still carrying this.
Yes.
And I love how she said, I don't know if you read the audio, but she did she did an interview on the audio with a fellow author. And one of the things she also said in the interview was like, after she finished reading the book or writing the book, that's when the real work actually began. And that's when the real work started, because in the process, she had to acknowledge all of the feelings, all the things that she had felt. So for you though, and I know we're coming close to end. Wow, an hour went by that fast.
No, right?
For you,
it went by real fast.
Would you read it again, or would you recommend this book to people? What do you feel?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would absolutely recommend this book. I do recommend this book. This is a necessary book. It was so necessary, especially for Black women. Yeah. You know what I mean? In our experience, in our lives, in our relationships. Because I feel like when Black authors write books like this, it's not only them sharing their story, but it's also that in a way them saying, I see you. Yeah. And I know you, and I know what you've been through because I've been through it. Yeah. And that's so important to me. It's so important to me. So absolutely, I would read this book again. It's definitely a book that I would revisit and that I always recommend. Ever since I read, I'm like, you need to read Somebody's Daughter, okay? Get into this
thing. Honestly, I think it was my library system because I check out a lot of audiobooks and stuff now and ebooks. So I think it was just like a recommendation that popped up for me before I even started my Bookstagram, and I put myself on the host list because obviously checking out the library. And honestly, I thought Somebody's Daughter was something different. I didn't, for some reason, I missed the words a memoir. I thought it was like another fiction book. Okay. And then when I started listening, I said, wait, this somebody's life. Right. I was just like, oh, well, I'm in here now. I'm here. Stay. And I do think that when Black people write memoirs, that's when they're the most authentic. And that is when we are definitely we can be relatable. And it's not to say that fiction doesn't do that for us too, but I feel like it is with those memoirs that we really be able to connect, and we realize like, oh, a lot of our lives and our experiences.
I'm not the only person that went through this.
Yes. And I think that does help for those people who may not ever be able to afford therapy or go to a therapy session. it helps them heal. It helps them, because I didn't had there were points in that book that I got really emotional and there have been books that have literally made me cry. And I'm just like, and they've been memoirs. And I just was like, and they've been memoirs by Black women. And I'm like, ooh, this healed, or ooh, this touched on something I didn't know was there.
Right.
Thank you. But at the same time, sis, I didn't need you to snatch my edges. Like,
right.
Them to stay intact on my head.
Right. No, seriously.
But yes, this has been a very enlightening and therapeutic session for me. Please tell people where they can follow you and where they can look you up if you want to share that information.
Yes. You guys can follow my Bookstagram at reader.bae.
Yes.
So READER.BAE.
Yes, this is great. So thank you all for listening. This has been another wonderful podcast episode, YouTube video. We will catch you back here next week.